Hello and welcome to What Do You Believe? And if you can tell from the set, we have a lot of question marks here and we have a lot of questions. And I know you guys have a lot of questions, so feel free to send in your questions and we'll try to answer them a later time. Welcome, Francesca. We're happy you're here and we're ready for all your questions and your answers and your comments and everything else.
Thank you.
I want to introduce Dr. Nagy Eskandar. He's a medical doctor and he's the fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of England. And you practiced surgery for 25 years.
Yes.
How was that?
That was great. In United Kingdom, yeah, that was really wonderful.
Yeah, we're really happy that you're here, and we want to ask questions and want to hear your answers.
Sure.
And maybe you'll ask us questions, or no,
Yeah.
maybe
Probably
not.
not.
Okay, so we're still talking about the contradiction between science and the Bible, or the science and the Christian faith, or faith in general.
Yeah.
I mean, is there contradiction, and why, and how is this all working?
Yeah. Our approach is to define what is science, and then we talk about what is the Bible. And we are still discussing what is science, and we discover there are two types of science. Operational science, that's experimental science we can approve in the laboratory, and we all agree about that. The atheists and the Christian practice that type of science. The problem is the historical science or the original science, the things that happened in the past that we cannot repeat at the present, and how can we understand them. So let me start by the secular starting point. The people who don't believe in a creator God, so what do they believe? Because they have a belief as well. So the first thing, they believe that nature is all that exists. Matter is all what exists and nothing else. Nothing spiritual, nothing outside the material world. And they believe also that everything can and must be explained by three things: by time, by chance, by laws of nature acting on the matter. So the method of explaining the universe to them is matter is all what exists, and you need just time, millions and millions of years. You need random chance, as if random chance can build something really constructive. That's in itself a problem. And there are laws of nature. We can examine them, and they believe that laws of nature acting on the matter can create anything. That's the secular starting point. We call that the religion of atheism, that's refusing God, or naturalism. So that's the naturalism, that matter is all what exists and everything must be explained by time, chance, laws of nature. Okay? Let us put that to the test. But before we do that, let me just quote one of the scientists and how he is really, I don't want to say the word arrogant, but probably it is the right word. We'll see. He said, and the set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated, moreover, that materialism is absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. So these scientists, starting with the assumption that matter is all, everything, and chance and time and laws of nature acting on the matter will explain life, and it cannot actually. And he said, we cannot allow a divine foot in the door of the laboratory. He made up his mind. He's not entering into discussion, this chap. I respect his science, I respect his mind, but I disagree with his principle. Because this principle really excluded an important factor in finding the truth. He said material things is everything, but material thing cannot explain life, because life is more than a material thing. And he said we cannot invoke an intelligent creator to explain the origin of living creatures. But we know for sure from the operational science that life comes from life. Chemical reaction, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen cannot interact with each other and form amino acids form protein, protein form a cell, cell divide and give you life. That doesn't happen. You have to have life to produce life. So these scientists excluded God as a source of life. And he cannot explain life based on the material things. So let us look at this picture now. And if you look at the cloud in the sky, you say, yes, that can happen by time, chance, and laws of nature. The water evaporates and then come to a very cold part of the atmosphere and then condenses and forms this sort of clouds. That's time, chance, and laws of nature. Nothing wrong with that. If you find the word apple written on a cloud, can you say this happened by chance, time, laws of nature? A-P-P-L-E? No, that means there is an intelligence behind this word. And this word has a meaning only in the English language. If I speak Russian, this means nothing to me. So when you have intelligence and you have complicated structure, that means there is a source of intelligence to that.
Doctor, can I ask you
Yeah, sure.
about that? So you're saying that we can't include, or we have to include God in the equation of where life came from, right? So where is the proof, though, that we should bring in this other factor that, like the scientist you brought up said, we can't observe? So where do we get this other factor from?
Exactly. If we look at how life started, you cannot have inorganic matter or organic matter acting together and form life. You cannot have that. So the material method of understanding life comes to a cul-de-sac, comes to an end, because life cannot come from non-life. There is a principle in biology called biogenesis. Biogenesis meaning life comes from life. Abiogenesis meaning life can come from not life, but that never happened. Do you know, initially, before Pasteur came in, they thought that life can just happen spontaneously. So if you bring a piece of meat and leave it exposed for a long time, it becomes rotten and some flies come out of it. So they thought, yeah, dead meat can produce life. They discovered, obviously, there is ova on this decaying matter. Yeah, absolutely. And that produced the flies. Okay? So that's the work of Pasteur, really. So it came to a good understanding that life comes from life. So if we limit ourselves to material methodology, we will come to an end point saying from where life comes. Life has to have a source of life. And that's when we have the revelation of God in Christ, in the Bible, and through creation. Yeah? Great. Let us continue these examples. If you look at this rock falling on the side, and there are some plants coming, we'll not start discussing the origins of this rock, but you can say, yeah, this can happen by the force of wind, and it is very strong that the power of the wind was overcoming the strength of this rock, so it fell, and you can have this product as a time, chance, and laws of nature. If I take you to Rushmore, and you look at these carved heads of the American president states, in the States, can you stand in front of this and say, look at the effect of the wind and the rain and the dust and the matter that formed this picture? You cannot come to this conclusion.
No.
You have to understand that there was a person with a gift and ability and methodology who was able to build these statues for us. So that's when we bring God, or actually God was there from the beginning, but that's when we have God as an understanding of what we are seeing, because that cannot be explained by time, chance, and laws of nature. Okay?
The big picture question that we're asking is, how do bats fly, and what attributes of bat wings and flight performance can I mimic in trying to build my own robotic wings? I think bats are just really amazing, spectacular flyers. Their wings are extremely dynamic, so much more dynamic than birds or insects. If you look at the wings of a bat, they're just like our hands. They have all these joints that let their wings adapt into lots of different shapes, giving them a tremendous range of aerodynamic forces and maneuverabilities. They fly much better than anything we've engineered. In many ways, anything we've dreamed of engineering. And I would just love to figure out how that works and then try to duplicate it. The overall research project has two components. One component is trying to study bat flight in terms of the anatomy of the wing structure, the real material properties of the bones and the skin, looking at the physiology, looking at the wing motions and the aerodynamics. And then the other half takes all of those different components together and tries to mimic them and build them into some sort of a robotic flapper. Throughout my graduate experience, I've become both a biologist and an engineer. I started off, during my undergrad, I had a strong biology background, and I was more of a field biologist running around the jungle catching bats. And then when I came to graduate school, I wanted to study flight, which required a bit more of an engineering background. I needed to take the extra time to learn the engineering. The Graduate Research Fellowship gave me the extra time to really focus on that aspect of my education, so that now I'm in a point where I am very much both biologist and engineer. Not only did we mimic the shape and many of the material properties of an actual bat wing, we also mimicked the motions. So the joints and everything were aligned in a way that they could move at the appropriate speeds and magnitudes. So I would put the wing into a wind tunnel and flap it at realistic kinematics. I'm able to recreate the motions fairly accurately of the real bat wing, but to do so I have to use very large motors that weigh much more than a real bat. It really kind of tells you how spectacular muscle is. There's nothing else that's able to produce as much force or power in as small and light of a volume as muscle. I think in many ways our creativity and our imagination is limited by our inspiration. When I was building the robot, there was many times that I would get stuck, that something would break and I didn't know how to fix it. And whenever I came up against one of those walls, I was able to look to nature to see how they would fix it and take that inspiration and be able to use it to improve my own model and fix any problems. So there was a lot of things that I learned from trying to build a bat, and particularly the failures in trying to build a bat, that told me much about the biology. Our elbow kept breaking in one particular spot, and we noticed that the real bat wings are reinforced in that same area. So far I have not been able to produce anything that worked better than nature. The materials that nature is able to produce and the motors that nature is able to produce are still so much more spectacular.
That's a very interesting video, actually. This is a biologist and engineer looking at the bats and their wings and how they fly. And he found that it is so complicated, and he cannot even mimic that in the laboratory to make another wing like this. And he is willing to accept this happened by chance and time and laws of nature, and not accepting a creator, an intelligent designer for this. He's an intelligent young man, and he's using his intelligence to create something similar to the wings of the bat, but he's refusing to accept that there is a designer. He is himself a designer. He's denying himself, really.
Well, thank you, Doctor, for this video. It was great. We'll take a small break, and don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like a copy of this episode, please call 714-709-4300 or email us at info@alkarmatv.com. You can also visit our website at www.alkarmatv.com. Also, you can write to P.O. Box 3610, Seal Beach, California 90740.
Welcome back to What Do You Believe in? Doctor, is there a chance that I was made by chance?
That's a very interesting question. No, our body is more complicated, David, than can happen by chance. I'll give you a little example. You know, if I cut myself here, I need this blood to clot, otherwise I'll bleed to death. For that to happen, we need 13 factors to interact together. There is something called the extrinsic and intrinsic factor and common pathway. And we need all of that to act in order to stop this bleeding. Otherwise, I'll bleed to death. You know, people with hemophilia, they are lacking number 8. And 8 we discovered is A and B and C. So if I'm lacking 1 out of the 13, I can bleed to death. Can you think this has happened by chance and time and laws of nature? It's all complicated and designed. That's one example. You need your kidney, you need your heart, you need your skin, you need all of that to work together. You cannot wait for millions of years for this to happen. It has to be designed day one, because it's functioning day one. So there is no chance that we can come by chance.
Well, I mean, if we're still developing or we're changing every day or growing, why? I mean, if we observe that today, why didn't that happen over millions of years of just growth and things developing into what is today very, very complicated.
Right, because we have to work, there's something called irreducible complexity. We need all the factors together. You can't wait for every organ to develop over millions of years. You need all of them working together. And we are developing and maturing within the human race. We didn't change into another sort of kind. We are human, and we are developing within the human race. Yes, our shape will differ, our color of eyes differ. That's all within the genetic pool of the human race. They did a mapping of the human genome, and they came to conclusion that we are all one race. When they came to that conclusion, actually, I said, okay, thank you. I know that from Genesis chapter 1, because God created us as a man and a woman, and the head of the human race as one particular race. So we accept we are changing. Yes, we are. That's something observable. But we cannot change and develop a wing, for example. If I decided to develop a wing, I cannot keep flapping my arms millions of times and then I'll be able to fly.
Well, I believe I can fly.
You need an airplane. But if you think you can fly by your own, you need to see a psychiatrist. Because really, yes, there are, all this information are coded on the DNA, desoxyribonucleic acid. And all this information comes from information. Information doesn't come from matter. Information comes from intelligence. We all know that.
Well, I mean, I want to, like, because you just said matter, like, I want to try to understand more, what does it mean if I'm just matter, or if everything is just matter? Like, what does materialism in general offer us?
Yeah, materialism deals with what we see here and now. So they examine my DNA and say, this is the DNA. How it came about, they cannot explain that, because that cannot happen by chance, time, and laws of nature, because it's so complicated. So that's the material way of thinking, looking at what we have now as matter. But they refuse any spiritual component. They refuse any intelligent designer, as we have seen this scientist at the beginning of this segment saying, we will not allow a divine food in the laboratory. So that's the materialism. And it cannot explain life, because life is more than matter, because there are elements in life which are more complicated and cannot be explained by time, chance, and laws of nature. So this biologist and engineer at the same time, happy to understand that the wing of the bat is very complicated, and he proved that in the video, and it's beautifully done actually. And he says this is Mother Nature. What is Mother Nature? What is nature? What is the power of nature to develop that? There is no power. You need an energy, you need power to produce something like this. So he is willing to accept this is an evolutionary process to develop a bat, and he's refusing to accept that this is designed, in spite of the fact he's trying to design a similar wing to that bat.
He's working in designing something. So.
Exactly, and as if he is saying, I don't need intelligence to design this. I just need haphazard reactions, chance, time, and laws of nature. So that's enough, I think, for the secular starting point. And we just revise it again. Matter is all what exists. It's time, chance, and laws of nature. That's all what they have to explain life. And we have seen this is not enough to explain life. Let us come to biblical starting point, because we have to examine this as well to see if it's working or not. So in the biblical starting point, we believe that God is eternal. That means he is outside time. Let me explain something about time. We have time because we are part of the solar system. The Earth rotates around itself to make a day. The Earth rotates around the sun to make a year. The moon rotates around the Earth to make a month. That's why we have yesterday, today, and tomorrow, because we are part of the solar system. God lies outside the solar system, so he's not controlled by time. He's eternal. He has no beginning and no end. Let me explain that again. If you take this pen and leave it, it will drop because the gravity will pull it down. If I take that pen outside in the outer space, outside the gravity pull, and leave it, it will not fall because the gravity will not pull it down because there is no gravity. So you can't apply the laws of gravity to a subject outside gravity. You can't apply the laws of time to a person who is outside time. Somebody said to me, that's convenient. Put God outside time and he can do whatever you like. No, God has to be outside time to be able to create time. I have to be outside the book to write a book. I can't be inside the book to write the book. So God, in order to create, he is above and beyond his creation. He cannot be part of that creation.
Well, if he's like outside and he's that far, why do we care? Like, why does it matter if he's there or not? If he's like outside and he's not a part of the creation.
Yeah, he is outside, but he is interested in our creation. According to the Bible, he created us on his image. So we are VIPs, really. We are not just a development of animals. We are specially created in God's image. So he wants a relationship with us. This relationship was broken by sin because he gave us the freedom of choice. We decided to disobey him in Adam and Eve and say, God, we will set the rules. You are not going to set the rules. We are our own gods. So the relationship was broken. That's why, according to the Christian faith, we have the Lord Jesus Christ coming to pay the penalty of sin to reconnect us again. So he's outside time, but he's interested in us. And he created us and created the universe suitable for us to live in. Do you know the amount of oxygen and nitrogen and the temperature and the pressure is suitable for us here on Earth? It's not suitable anywhere else. You see the astronauts when they go outside, they wear these funny suits with adjusting all the temperature and pressures. I thank God I don't need that every day morning before I go to work, having a suit like this, because God looked after all of that. It's not by chance that the temperature is adjusted, the pressure is adjusted, the oxygen and nitrogen, all the other elements in the atmosphere are right. The distance of the Earth to the sun is right distance. The distance of the moon to the Earth is the right distance. That does not happen by chance. Right, so the biblical starting point. God is eternal. He's a good God because in other mythology, they believe that gods were fighting and created the universe. It's very sad, actually, but that's in mythology, and I'm sure you have read something like this. So God is eternal. God is a good God. God is all-knowing and all-powerful. He knows everything, and he can create from nothing, which we cannot do in the material world. We have to have matter to create something. He is a holy God. He has created everything. That's what we believe, and we have to put that to the test. This is just the belief, but we'll put it to the test in a moment. Number two, we believe that God's perfect word is the Bible, and he reveals God's character and the origin of history to understand creation. So we believe that God is eternal, and he revealed himself in the creation, in his word, the Bible, in Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That's what we believe as Christians. We'll put all of that to the test, by the way, right? So that's just explaining the two different points. Now we have two clear different points, really. Materialistic, one saying matter is all what exists, time, chance, and laws of nature. Another starting point is biblical starting point. God is eternal. God is good. God revealed himself in the Bible. So they are two different starting points, and they will come to different conclusions. That's the battleground, really, if you like. Not the operational science, because we all agree about that. I hope this point is clear, because if it is clear, it helps us when we study biology, geology, astronomy.
I think it's clear for now, but we will talk about it more for next episodes. And I have like two questions that I'm just gonna leave with you, and then we can talk about it for next episodes. First one, why does it matter? Why does it matter where it all started, how it all started? Like, it started over here. Like, why does it matter? Why do I need to know where it all came from? And then if we're gonna compare these two stories, if you can highlight where it's coming, like where it's starting and where it's ending. Why would I want to believe that story or believe that story? And I don't want to say they're stories because maybe for some of us science is, the research or like there's, evidence or anything like that in terms of science. But just in general, where does that lead us or where would it take?
That's wonderful. But let me just say what type of science we are talking about.
Right.
Science as experiment, I believe that, and I do that in my work. But when you say historical science, there is assumptions. And the research based on assumptions. And we need to discuss that in detail.
Great.
So from now on, we'll differentiate that. When we mention science, we'll qualify it all the time.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you.
And I want to leave you with this. C.S. Lewis said, "You never know how much you really believe anything until its truth or falsehood becomes a matter of life and death to you. So, what do you believe? We'll see you next time.